endless fear campaign about Islam was started 15 years ago by Israel. It's so you can fight their wars. It's to justify a police state where the people won't be able to revolt.
Defending their faith and
Al-Qaeda member Adam Gaddan is actually a Jewish American. He's a Mossad agent whose real name is Adam Perlman. That was Israel's former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, who mentioned plans for the TSA and the Patriot Act 1 hour after the 9/11 attacks began. The Patriot Act after witnesses reported them filming and celebrating the first tower being hit. After watching the confiscated footage, police confirmed that they were celebrating and filming the attack.
As the world watched in disbelief, 5 Israelis, later discovered to be Mossad operatives, were seen dancing with joy.
You could see that they were like happy, you know, they didn't look shocked to me, you know, they didn't look shocked.
Curious, these Israelis had video cameras aimed at the Twin Towers prior to the first plane strike and were seen congratulating one another afterwards.
I thought it was very strange.
The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event. Our purpose was to document the event.
How did they know there was going to be a terrorist attack? And why would they celebrate a plane crashing into a building, killing a lot of people? Because now America will fight all of their wars for them. These cowards have manipulated others to kill and die for them in a war that will last decades. Mission accomplished. The Israelis arrested with explosives, and the Israelis arrested celebrating, both were driving vans from Urban Moving Systems, a Mossad front company. Police ran their names through the database, and 2 of the Israelis arrested on 9/11 were in fact Mossad agents. Vince Canistaro, Chief of Operations for Counterterrorism, CIA, confirmed this.
I was serving in a special unit in the army, and it's not a big secret or something like that. But there are things that I have to keep to myself as loyal to my country.
Watch what happens if you speak about the Israelis being arrested on 9/11.
When you imply that somehow Israelis were involved in the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, people are going to look at you, critics will say, you are an anti-Semite. Are you?
no, I'm not an anti-Semite. This is the main charge that's leveled against me, and has been for years, even before 9/11, because I am a critic of Zionist policies.
That's a very common technique among anti-Semites. They will twist things. I'm not an anti-Semite. I just believe X, Y, Z.
The Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv has reported Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly said the September 11th attacks have been good for Israel. Netanyahu said, quote, "We're benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq."
Hijacker Mohammed Atta was the guy that was used to justify the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, linking them to Al-Qaeda. Israeli intelligence falsely linked Iraq to Al-Qaeda by saying Mohammed Atta met with Iraqi officials in Prague, where they gave him anthrax. If you fly into a country, there's records of it. There were no records of Mohammed Atta being in Prague that day. Let's take a look at one of the anthrax letters which killed 5 Americans. 9/11. We have this anthrax. Death to America. Death to Israel. Allah is great. Mohammed Atta was on a jihad, yet he was known in Florida as a party animal. He was regularly banging strippers and snorting cocaine.
There was always drinking. If it wasn't wine, it was beer or liquor or whatever. There was always drinking. Always.
These guys had money flowing out their ass. I mean, excuse my language, but they never seemed to run out of money. I mean, they was just tossing money left and right. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. And they had mass supplies of cocaine.
Investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, Evidence linking these Israelis to 911 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information. Fox News has learned that one group of Israelis, spotted in North Carolina recently, is suspected of keeping an apartment in California to spy on a group of Arabs who the United States is also investigating for links to terrorism.
4 of his neighbors were Mossad agents. They were arrested, and their excuse was that they were spying on Arabs. So Israeli intelligence warns that Al-Qaeda will attack America months before 9/11. Israeli intelligence lives next door to Al-Qaeda member Mohammed Atta, but they don't do anything to stop him. That's a fantastic coincidence.
Carl, what about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something?
Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected. None of it necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together. A bigger question, they say, is how could they not have known? Almost a direct quote.
The 9/11 mastermind and his accomplice laughing it up and then going through their lines for a performance of martyrdom wills.
This video, seen here for the first time, appears to confirm that Ziad Jarrah was prodded along by Al-Qaeda. Jarrah frequently stumbles through his own martyrdom tape, can't maintain a serious tone. His Al-Qaeda handlers coach him to be more dramatic. Start again, one of them scolds him off camera. This speech requires passion. Why don't you try a different approach? A second man chimes in.
Al-Qaeda member Ziad Jarrah was the hijacker of Flight 93. His cousin, Ali al-Jarrah, was a Mossad agent. He was arrested in Lebanon after spying for Israel for over 25 years. Not only Jewish-owned media, but also Zionist Paul Joseph Watson writes about this.
People who are obsessed with Jews controlling the world never seem to present any evidence. I mean, I read the news every day. I track narratives that the mainstream media comes out with. I don't believe in this Jewish conspiracy because nobody presents any real, credible, hardcore evidence that it's taking place. If I saw actual evidence where it was a grand conspiracy, then I would talk about it, but I just don't see it.
There are, however, some steps you can take to curtail your losses and prevent the number of American casualties at home and abroad from rising even higher. The champions of Islam defending their faith and
Al-Qaeda member Adam Gadon is actually a Jewish American. He's a Mossad agent whose real name is Adam Perlman. His grandfather, Carl Perlman, was on the board of directors for the ADL, a criminal Zionist lobby which persecutes anyone who speaks the truth regarding the Jews. Oddly, the ADL was formed in 1913, the same year as the Federal Reserve. Paul Joseph Watson wrote about Adam Perlman as well. It's funny how shekels can make people change.
I don't see a big Jewish influence. I mean, Jewish people aren't really that present. You don't really notice them anywhere.
And the other variables that Bob wants to invoke here, and again, specifically on Islam, economics and political oppression, don't account for this behavior. The 19 hijackers were living in Germany. They all were college educated. Most of them had PhDs. These are engineers and architects. These people...
All the brothers who took part in the raids on America were dedicated, strong-willed, highly motivated individuals with a burning concern for Islam and Muslims. And they had to be chosen for such a difficult mission. Look at the pilots: Muhammad Atta, Marwan Shehi, Ziad Jarrah, Hani Hanjour. All of them had lived and studied in the West. All of them had the world within their reach if they had wanted it. But how could they live with themselves if they were to enjoy this worldly life while their ummah burns?
If you thought Sam Harris couldn't get any stupider, he just exposed himself. Once again, he's on damage control, saying political oppression has nothing to do with 9/11, assuming it was authentic. He deliberately lied about the hijackers to say even highly educated Muslims are prone to randomly committing terrorism, for no other reason than their beliefs. To make matters worse, these weren't even real Muslims. This agenda is being used to usher in a police state. In the alternative media, You'll often hear that it's the globalist or this mysterious New World Order who's behind these police-state measures. Nowadays, they will never talk about who in government is actually making these decisions.
Do you have to be an open, Mossad officer, like Chertoff or Mukasey or Rahm Emanuel? I mean, do you have to be a foreigner to run our government? Is it not enough that Israel had fingerprints all over 9/11?
Absolutely. Okay, getting back, I'm going to play this Hillary clip where she said that I say 9/11 is an inside job. No, what I said was the Saudi Arabians, the globalists, are basically funding radical jihad. They're letting these attacks take place. They're using that to take our rights.
As you've seen earlier, that was Israel's former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, who mentioned plans for the TSA and the Patriot Act 1 hour after the 9/11 attacks began. The Patriot Act was written by head of Homeland Security, Israeli-American dual citizen, Michael Chertoff, whose father is a Talmudic scholar that believes non-Jews are subhuman and shouldn't have any rights. Despite being an expert in religion, this is something that Sam Harris refuses to speak the truth about. Spearheading gun control is Mayor of Chicago, Israeli-American dual citizen, Rahm Emanuel. Israel's Security Minister, Gilad Erdan, is calling for worldwide internet censorship to counter criticism of Israel. Israel has a long record of using Al-Qaeda for political gain. Israel's Prime Minister in 2002, Ariel Sharon, said that Al-Qaeda was active in Gaza to justify attacks. Mossad agents setting up Al-Qaeda cells were arrested in Gaza by the Palestinian Authority.
How did your organization obtain the video?
Hi, we at SITE have been researching the jihadi threat online for over a decade, follow their steps, monitor their activities, and study their activities online. Anytime Al-Qaeda or ISIS become more and more sophisticated and adopt new technology, we follow that technology.
The fake ISIS beheading videos were officially leaked by Rita Katz, who's an Israeli intelligence agent. Her father was an Israeli spy who she claims was publicly hanged because of Saddam. Let's take another look at the anthrax letters that killed 5 Americans. We know Israel lied about 9/11. We know Israel lied about Iraqi officials giving anthrax to Mohammed Atta. Look what it says on the bottom. Death to Israel, Allah is great. This endless fear campaign about Islam was started 15 years ago by Israel. It's so you can fight their wars. It's to justify a police state where the people won't be able to revolt, but also to coalesce the public into supporting Israel's colonization of the Palestinians. In just under 70 years, Palestine has almost been wiped off the map. So for Israel, it's very important to demonize the victim as much as possible, or else people would see them similar to the Soviets and say, hey, we need to stop this from continuing. Western mainstream media, and now alternative media, is dominated by Jews, and they're pushing the Zionist agenda. They've been able to manipulate a lot of people into believing that Israel is defending itself from Islamic terrorism.
Good morning, America. Good morning, AIPAC.
Well, he's not lying. America's nothing more than the mule of the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, that's for sure.
The chain of attacks from Paris to San Bernardino, to Istanbul, to the Ivory Coast, and now to Brussels, and the daily attacks in Israel. This is one continuous assault on all of us. In all these cases, the terrorists have no resolvable grievances. It's not as if we could offer them Brussels or Istanbul or California or even the West Bank.
Orwellian speak. By turning the just cause of Palestinian redress for their stolen land into the realm of universal terrorism, Bibbsy makes snake charmers look like rank amateurs.
So my bias toward Israel, whenever you're talking about the conflict between Israel and her neighbors, My bias towards Israel is really a bias against suicide bombing and the use of human shields and an explicitly genocidal aspiration.
صغير ولد صغير من دار ربيع سنة صوروا سلام عشان ماسكينه دلع سلام سلام فاك يوم مرة ندير ابوك عرس
I want to ask you, are these men being detained? Yes. You can't use them as human shields. This is a war crime. You know that, right? They're standing in front of your Jeep. That's not a human shield? No. How is that not?
The Israeli army has been accused of using Palestinians, including children, as human shields during an operation in the West Bank. One case caught on camera by an Israeli human rights group appears to show Israeli soldiers forcing a Palestinian to go with them as they searched house to house in the West Bank town of Nablus. Another alleged victim who spoke to the BBC was just 11 years old.
They had their weapons pointed at me. I was so afraid that the soldiers might do what they threatened, take me to jail or shoot me.
Israeli soldiers have used Palestinian children as human shields many times. Instead of condemning them so these war crimes do not continue, Prime Minister Netanyahu will go on his Twitter and say Hamas is doing it. Sam Harris and many other Jews get paid to repeat this lie. It's been repeated so much that it has now become the norm. These are scumbags. Jeremy Bowen said he saw no evidence of Hamas using human shields and was removed from his reporting position in Gaza.